Thanksgiving has always felt like a stage play in my family scripted smiles, forced gratitude, and silent scorekeeping behind every glance. But this year, something was different. Colder, sharper. I knew it the moment I walked through the door and saw that my name wasn't on any place card. The table was beautifully set for 11. 10 names. One missing. Mine. I stood there holding the pumpkin tart I baked from scratch, unsure where to go. My mom barely looked up. My younger brother, Ryan, was already surrounded by laughter and wine refills. I sat on a folding chair by the wall like a guest no one invited. Then, just before dessert, my mom raised her glass and said, "Let's toast to the only child who actually made us proud." The room clapped. For Ryan. I stood. My hands were shaking. "Thanks," I said, for finally saying it out loud. And I turned toward the door until I heard my father's voice. "Wait, tell them what you did." I hadn't expected a red carpet, but I also hadn't expected nothing. No greeting at the door, no hug. No, "Happy Thanksgiving, Emily." Just a creak of hinges and my mom standing there with a half-full glass of Chardonnay and a face that said, "Oh, you actually showed up." I forced a smile, held up the tart I'd spent hours baking, and stepped inside. She barely glanced at it. "There's already dessert," she mumbled before walking away. The living room was already buzzing with laughter. Me aunt and uncle by the fireplace, my cousins on the couch, and Ryan off course standing in the center like the guest of honor. I hovered for a second, unsure whether to join or disappear. When dinner was called, I followed the group into the dining room and froze. The table was laid with Caracina, crystal, gold-trimmed napkins, 11 chairs, 10 place cards. My name wasn't there. I scanned the table once more. Maybe they forgot? No one looked up. No one offered to scoot over. I spotted a metal folding chair against the wall. I grabbed it, quietly dragging it to the end of the table like a misfit puzzle piece. The screech of metal against hardwood echoed louder than it should have. Still, no one blinked. They were already deep into their stories. Ryan's new promotion, Ryan's condo upgrade, Ryan's brilliant pitch that saved the whole team. My uncle clapped him on the back like he'd just landed a spacecraft. I ate slowly. My food tasted fine, but it sat heavy in my mouth. I looked at my mom once, hoping for even a flicker of connection. She didn't notice, or pretended not to. And then came the moment. My mom stood, glass lifted high, and called for attention. The room quieted like they knew what was coming, like it had been rehearsed. "I just want to say how proud I am," she began, voice already thick with wine and self-importance. "This year, more than ever, it's clear who's really stepped up, who's made us proud." I felt it coming, the sting, the punch. "So, let's raise a glass to the only child who's actually made us proud." Every head turned to Ryan. They clapped. My fork stilled midair. My chair may as well have vanished. I wasn't part of this story. Not tonight. Not ever. I stood up slowly. My knees didn't shake, but my chest did. I looked right at her. "Thanks," I said, my voice cutting through the clapping, for finally saying it out loud. And I turned toward the door. I hadn't planned on making a scene. I just wanted to eat, say something polite, and leave before the weight in my chest turned into tears. But when my mother raised that glass and toasted Ryan like he was the family's personal miracle, something in me cracked. The silence that followed my words wasn't dramatic, it was surgical, precise, cutting through the air like a scalpel. I was halfway to the door when I heard it. Wait. It was my father. 3 decades of being quiet, of looking away, of sipping wine when things got awkward, and now he spoke? I turned, confused. His voice was calm, but resolute. "Tell them what you did." The room turned with him. Eyes flicked from my face to his and back again. My mother lowered her glass slightly, clearly thrown off script. Ryan furrowed his brow, that smug smile faltering just enough to let doubt slip in. "What is he talking about?" Ryan asked, his voice trying to stay light. I looked at my dad, wondering how much he knew. I hadn't told him the details. I hadn't told anyone. I thought I didn't think he'd even noticed. He nodded. Not a push, not pressure, just quiet permission. So I faced the table, the same table where I'd eaten dozens of holiday meals. Helped set every year since I was old enough to hold a forkhand, I told them. You all want to toast to Ryan, I said, voice steady. But maybe toast to me first, because I'm the reason he even got that job. Gasps were swallowed. Forks hovered. My aunt blinked like she didn't hear me right. Ryan gave a short, incredulous laugh. What? That's not. The hiring freeze at Crestfall PR? Yeah. They weren't taking applications. Ryan had no shot. But I sent his resume directly to someone I mentored, someone in HR who owed me a favor. I cleaned up his cover letter, rewrote half his resume, and made the call. That's why he got the interview. My mom's mouth tightened. That's not true. Ryan was fully qualified. Ryan didn't even know what PR stood for when he sent me the draft. I shot back. He majored in film studies and listed great people skills as his top qualification. I handed him that opportunity. And I never said a word, because I didn't want the credit. The room was silent. My brother's fiancée looked away. My uncle tapped the table nervously. Only my father remained still watching, waiting. I didn't need applause, I said. But maybe, just once, I didn't want to be erased. My voice didn't shake. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was just tired of being invisible at a table I helped keep upright. Ryan didn't speak. No one did. And for the first time, their silence wasn't mine to carry. You're lying, Ryan said finally, but his voice didn't carry the confidence it usually did. He looked at me, then at Dad, then at Mom, searching for someone to refute it for him. No one did. I'm not, I replied calmly. You begged me to help with your resume, remember? You said you were terrible at wording things. I didn't just fix the grammar, Ryan. I fixed your chances. Mom crossed her arms. You make everything about you, Emily. Can't you let your brother have one moment? I felt the familiar burn rise in my throat, the one I'd swallowed since I was 17. But this time, I let it speak. You mean like when I graduated college early with honors and you said, "Are you sure the ceremony's worth going to?" Or when I won the state tech scholarship and you called it a cute little computer thing? Meanwhile, Ryan finishes a 6-week online branding course and you frame the certificate. My mother's face flushed red, but not with shame, just irritation. That's not the same. No, I said, voice steady. It never is. Because Ryan's mediocrity has always been celebrated like royalty, while my success is inconvenient background noise. Ryan looked at me now with something closer to discomfort than anger. I didn't know you went through all that. You didn't need to, I said. I wasn't asking for a medal, but I was hoping that one day I wouldn't have to drag a chair to my own family's table just to be seen. Silence blanketed the room again, and for a second, I almost regretted speaking. Almost. Then my father cleared his throat. I didn't know she helped you get that job, Ryan, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Ryan didn't answer. He just stared at the turkey like it might save him. I turned to Mom. You want to talk about qualifications? He was underqualified for that job. He got it because of me, and I never said a word, not even when you toasted him in front of all of us. Mom scoffed. So what do you want now, Emily? Credit? I stared at her, stunned. No, I want truth. I want acknowledgement. I want to not be erased in a room I helped keep from falling apart. She rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. But her voice wavered just slightly. Ryan spoke again, softer now. Emily, I didn't know how much you did. That's the thing, I said. You didn't want to know. It was easier to believe you were the chosen one than admit someone else cleared the path for you. The shame on his face was real, and for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. I didn't plan to unload years of quiet disappointment at the dinner table, but once the dam cracked, the flood wouldn't stop. Do you remember? I asked, scanning the table. When I flew to Chicago to present at that national coding conference? My mother blinked, vaguely. I placed top 5. You told people it was nice that I liked computers. Ryan got 3rd place in a local pie eating contest once and you made t-shirts. A few cousins snorted quietly. No one laughed out loud. I worked 2 jobs in college, so you didn't have to co-sign my loans, I continued. When Dad threw his back out and couldn't work, I sent groceries every week for 2 months. You said it was sweet of me, like I was some stranger helping out of pity. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't crying. I was done performing for an audience that never wanted to see the real me. When you got that letter from the IRS last year about the lien on the house, I added, you said God must have fixed it because the case disappeared. It wasn't God, it was me. I paid it off quietly so Dad wouldn't lose the home he built. My mother narrowed her eyes. If you had that kind of money, why didn't you help when Ryan's car broke down last month? The room collectively flinched. That's when I realized, I said, it's not that you don't understand, it's that you don't care to. Ryan needing a car was more urgent to you than Dad keeping his house, and I had nothing left to give. She opened her mouth to respond, but my father raised a hand not loudly, just firmly, and she stopped. He turned to me. You paid the lien? I nodded. With what? My savings. All of it. He looked down for a moment, then back up, pain flickering in his eyes. You shouldn't have had to. I know, I said. But someone had to, and I thought maybe just maybe it would matter. My mom stood abruptly. I need some air. She walked out, and a few seconds later, Ryan followed, his face pale, his steps slow. And just like that, I was alone again. Only this time, it was different. Because now, they all knew. Every person at that table knew the version of me they'd refused to see for years. The one who stayed silent. The one who sacrificed. The one they erased, one celebration at a time. I stepped outside. The air was sharp with November cold, but it felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in that dining room. I was halfway down the porch when I heard my name. Emily, wait. It was Ryan. His voice wasn't cocky this time. It was smaller, hesitant. I turned to face him, the porch light casting long shadows between us. He didn't come all the way down at first. Just stood there gripping the doorframe like if he let go, the truth might drag him down with it. I need to admit something, he said, voice cracking slightly. I crossed my arms. Then go ahead. I knew, he said, about the job. Not at first, but after I got the offer I overheard a call. HR mentioned your name. I knew you were the one who made it happen. I stared at him. And you said nothing. I wanted to believe I earned it, he admitted. I told myself it didn't matter, that I still had to do the interview, still had to show up, but when Mom started calling me her success story, I didn't correct her. You didn't just stay silent, I said. You let her erase me, and you soaked it up like sunshine. He flinched. I saw vitriol regret flickering through that curated, always camera-ready expression. I'm not proud of it, he said, but that's not all. My stomach tensed. There's more? He finally stepped off the porch. His voice dropped to a whisper. Last year, when Dad was recovering, and you offered to help refinance the house, Mom told me not to let you. I blinked. What? She said it would be a mistake, that you'd use it to control everything. She asked me to talk you out of it. Memories surged, Ryan telling me, maybe it's better if you don't get involved. You've got enough stress. I thought he was protecting me. Turns out, he was shielding a lie. I didn't think you'd actually do it, he added quickly. I didn't think you'd spend your savings. But I did. My voice came out flat. I know, he whispered, and it's been eating me alive. We stood in silence, surrounded by distant laughter from inside a world that suddenly felt miles away. I looked at him, not the golden boy, not the Instagram perfect brother, but the kid who used to ask me to read him stories when he couldn't sleep. Ryan, I said quietly, you were never the problem. But you let the problem grow because it benefited you. I know, he said. I'm trying to be better. I didn't forgive him. Not yet. But for the first time, he wasn't just a silhouette in Mom's spotlight. He was trying to step out of it. Ryan took a shaky breath and looked at me, almost like he wanted permission to speak again. I didn't say anything, but I didn't walk away either. That seemed to be enough. There's something else, he said. It's about the house. I frowned. What about it? He glanced back at the front door, lowered his voice. Mom's been talking to a realtor. What? She's trying to sell it before the end of the year. I felt like I'd been punched in the ribs. Without telling Dad? He nodded. She said if she does it now, she doesn't have to list him on the paperwork because the deed is still in her name. She's already picked out a condo, said she wants to downsize and move in with Aunt Linda. She's leaving Dad? She says it's temporary. But, no, she's leaving him. She just hasn't told him yet. A silence fell between us. The kind of silence you only feel when something inside you breaks clean in half. She's planning to sell the house, I repeated. The same house I emptied my savings to protect? And she didn't tell him? Ryan's face crumpled a little. She told me not to say anything. Said it would just complicate things. But after tonight, after what you said, I couldn't keep it quiet anymore. My hand clenched into a fist. Not from rage, something worse. Betrayal laced with exhaustion. I had done everything I could to keep that home standing, to keep Dad secure, and Mom had been plotting to cash it in behind everyone's back. She was going to blindside him, I whispered. Ryan nodded. I didn't realize how fast my heart was beating until I felt it in my neck. The weight of all the years I'd spent being dismissed suddenly fused with the shock that it wasn't just me she didn't value, it was everything. And then the front door creaked open. Dad stepped onto the porch, holding his jacket in one hand, confusion in his eyes but strength in his stance. You should both come back inside, he said. There's something I need to say. Ryan looked at me unsure. I was frozen. Part of me wanted to keep walking, to let them all stew in their carefully curated delusions. But something in Dad's face, something firm and vulnerable held me there. I turned to Ryan. His expression wasn't defensive, or arrogant, or polished. It was raw, and for the first time in years, he didn't seem like Mom's favorite. He just looked like my brother. So I nodded, and together we followed Dad back inside. The laughter had died. The conversations were gone. What was left was that awkward, suffocating silence that always follows an emotional bomb. Everyone was seated, except Dad. He stood at the head of the table now where Mom always sat, and when she returned from wherever she'd gone, she looked at him like he'd stolen her throne. He didn't blink. I've made a lot of mistakes as a father, he began. But the biggest one was letting this family pretend that being loud meant being right, that silence meant weakness, that the child who never asked for attention didn't need it. He turned to me. Emily has carried this family more than most of you will ever know. I couldn't breathe. No one else could either. She paid the IRS lien last year, quietly. She helped refinance the house. She helped me walk when I could barely stand, cooked when I couldn't get out of bed, and never once asked for thanks. The only sound was the ticking clock over the fireplace. And while we were clapping for Ryan, Dad said, looking around the table, we were standing on the shoulders of the person we ignored. My mother finally spoke, her voice brittle. Who told you all this? He looked at her. It doesn't matter who told me. What matters is that I know now. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a manila envelope. He set it on the table. I've spoken to our lawyer, he said. The house starting next month will be in both our names, Emily and I. Gasps. Real audible gasps. You're giving her the house? My mother snapped. I'm giving her what she already saved. She tried to speak again, but he lifted another paper. You signed over financial control during the refinance, remember? You never read the fine print. You don't have the authority to stop me. Her face turned pale. And for the first time in my life, my mother Cynthia Carson had no comeback. She sat down, because she had nowhere else to go. The silence that followed was electric thick, sharp, alive with tension. No one moved. Not even Ryan. It was as if the house itself had paused to hear what would come next. My mother sat down, but it wasn't graceful. It was the collapse of someone who'd run out of options. Dad remained standing. He looked older than he had a few minutes ago, but there was something unshakable in his posture. Not anger, not bitterness, just Conviction. You signed over the rights when we refinanced, he repeated. Because you didn't want to deal with the paperwork. Because you thought it didn't matter. But it mattered. And now Emily and I share this home legally, fully. My aunt cleared her throat, clearly trying to diffuse the moment. Well, maybe we should all just… No, Dad interrupted. This isn't something we smooth over with pie and polite excuses. Not this time. He looked around the table at every cousin, uncle, in-law, who had clapped moments ago when my mother toasted Ryan. You all sat here, he said, and applauded while my daughter was humiliated at her own family's table, and I said nothing. That's on me. I let my silence become permission. His voice cracked then. Just barely. Enough to make my throat tighten. When I was recovering from surgery, it was Emily who paid the bills, who made sure the lights stayed on. Not because she wanted recognition, but because she couldn't stand to see her family fall apart. He turned toward me. His eyes were glassy now. And I let her do it alone. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. He turned back to the room. And, while I was letting her carry that weight, I watched her mother toast her brother for things Emily made possible. Ryan lowered his head. He didn't try to defend himself. He didn't need to. The guilt had already settled into his shoulders. Mom, still seated at the end of the table, scoffed quietly. This is ridiculous. Dad's head turned slowly. What's ridiculous is that you were ready to sell this house. The house Emily helped save and move in with your sister. And you didn't think I'd find out? She glared at Ryan, who didn't look back at her. I was going to tell you, she said, voice tight. You were going to surprise me with a listing agreement and a forwarding address, he snapped. You weren't downsizing. You were abandoning. The word hung in the air like a slap. Mom stood again, this time with fire in her eyes. Do you think managing this house has been easy? While you go to work? While you sit in silence? I've done everything. You've done everything except listen, Dad said. To me, to your daughter, to the truth. She turned to me. So what? You win now? I met her gaze. This was never about winning. I didn't want a trophy. I just wanted to not be erased. Something broke behind her eyes, but she didn't cry. She never did. She simply turned, walked out of the room again, and this time, no one followed. Dad looked at me. I know I'm late, Emily, but I'm here now. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Thank you. He nodded. You deserve to feel like this home is yours. Not because your name is on the deed, but because your heart always was. And that was it. No grand speech, no violin swell, just truth laid bare in front of everyone who needed to hear it. When I looked around the room again, no one made eye contact. They weren't ashamed of me. They were ashamed of themselves. And for once, I didn't shrink beneath their silence. I stood in it, owned it. It was no longer the silence of being ignored. It was the silence that follows a reckoning. People began to leave not long after. No more laughter, no hugs goodbye, just the rustle of coats, the clink of keys, and the heavy sound of realization hanging in the air. Even my usually nosy cousin didn't say a word. Ryan stayed behind. He helped clear the table without being asked. No phone in hand, no performative comments, just quiet movements, like he was finally learning how to show up without needing a spotlight. In the kitchen, Dad poured himself a glass of wine. Then he poured one for me. We didn't toast. We didn't need to. A few minutes later, Ryan approached me with 2 mugs of coffee, one for him, one for me. I don't know if I can fix all of this, he said, not looking up. But I want to try. Not just because I feel guilty. Okay, partly that. But mostly because I miss having a real sister. Not just the idea of one. I took the mug. We'll see, I said gently. He nodded. Fair. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. But we weren't on opposite sides of the table anymore either, and maybe that was enough for now. When I finally stepped outside, the air had turned colder, but it didn't bother me. I looked back at the house, the porch I once entered like an outsider, the windows still glowing with light. It still looked the same, weathered, familiar, but it felt different now. Because this time, I wasn't leaving empty. This time, I had said what needed to be said. I had claimed what had always been Mineno, just the house, but the right to exist in my own family's story. The next morning, I woke up in my small apartment and made breakfast like I always did. But something inside me was quieter, steadier. My phone buzzed, a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to all night. "We were all wrong about you. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Don't be sorry. Just be better." Then I turned the phone face down, took a bite of toast, and let the peace settle in the kind that comes not from being praised, but from finally being free.